In the dimly lit room, a single candle flickers, casting long, wavering shadows across the cracked walls. The air is thick, charged with an unseen energy. Kneeling before the flame, the lost soul whispers a prayer, words that feel as though they were once known, now forgotten. The room hums with an unsettling vibration, an odd metallic taste rising in the air. The candle flame stretches unnaturally, bending like the reach of a hand. The walls around the lost soul seem to move, as though the shadows themselves are alive, twisting and stretching. A deep vibration shakes the wooden floor beneath them. Without warning, the flame bursts into a blinding white light, flooding the room in a luminous blaze. The lost soul feels the heat sear their skin, but it is not a physical burn. It is something far deeper, something that touches the very core of their being. As the light intensifies, a tall, shifting silhouette appears before them. Its form glows with a molten silver sheen, edges blurring as if it were made of liquid light. No wind, no footsteps, only the weight of unseen eyes. The voice, though not heard, reverberates inside the lost soul's chest, sending a chill through their spine. You have been seen. The words are felt, not just heard, leaving an imprint in the very essence of their soul, marking them as chosen or cursed. The faithful guide steps into the dim room, their presence calm and steady. Unlike the lost soul, they exude a quiet assurance. Their gaze lands on the man before them, and they know immediately. The awakening has begun. You felt it, didn't you? The faithful guide asks softly. The lost soul stares at them, confusion clouding his eyes. His mind is reeling, his heart still trembling from the force of the vision. How could he explain what had just happened? It was a sign. The faithful guide continues, voice like the gentle rustle of leaves, the first of many. You've been called. The path is set before you, and it will test you. But remember, every step you take will bring you closer to the light. The words sink deep into the lost soul's heart, though doubt still lingers. Can he trust this, or is it merely a fleeting moment of madness? The faithful guide waits, offering only patience, not pressure. When the divine speaks, they add softly, you listen, but the choice is yours. Only you can decide whether to follow the path. David looks up at the faithful guide, his mind a whirl of questions, yet his tongue betrays him. He opens his mouth, but no words come out. The truth of what he has just experienced is too overwhelming to comprehend. The divine presence had been real. But what now? The faithful guide watches him quietly, understanding more than words could express. You are not alone, she reassures him, her voice soothing like a distant melody. The path is never easy, but you are not meant to walk it in silence. Speak when you are ready. David's heart races, still unsure of where to go from here. But something in her calm steadiness soothes his fears, even as doubt lingers. Tell me, she continues gently, what do you feel? For the first time since the encounter, David feels his breath steady. He knows this is only the beginning, but somehow, for the first time, he is willing to face it. David stands up slowly, uncertain whether to trust the calm advice of the faithful guide or to retreat into his doubts. His gaze shifts toward the window, the light outside, now dimming into the early hours of the evening. He feels a strange pull, as if the world itself is calling him. The faithful guide watches silently, giving him space to reflect. The divine speaks to us in many ways, she murmurs. Sometimes we feel it in our hearts, sometimes we hear it in whispers, and sometimes, she pauses, her voice softening, sometimes we see it with our eyes like you just did. David's pulse quickens at her words. It was real. It wasn't a hallucination. But what does it mean for him now? He takes a deep breath, looking back at her. I don't know where to begin, he admits. She nods slowly, her eyes filled with understanding. Begin with yourself. Everything else will fall into place. Rah. David steps toward the door, the weight of his encounter still heavy in his chest. I have to know what this means, he says, almost to himself. I can't ignore this. The faithful guide places a hand gently on his shoulder, her touch grounding him. "You don't have to understand everything at once," she says softly. "The truth will unfold when you're ready, but you must have faith." David nods slowly, though doubt still lingers. How can he trust something so intangible, so elusive? But as he steps into the quiet night, the cool air on his face feels different, alive, like a part of something greater. The road ahead is uncertain, but for the first time he feels a spark of hope. He isn't alone in this journey. And that thought, just for a moment, gives him peace. The next morning, the journey begins. The air is crisp with the promise of dawn, and David feels the weight of the path ahead. The faithful guide stands at the entrance, waiting patiently. "Are you ready?" she asks softly. David nods, though his heart is heavy. He feels as though the weight of the world has been placed upon his shoulders. Yet, there's a curiosity that rises within him, a hunger for the truth that pushes him forward despite the fear. Thirst test is upon him, though he does not yet know what it will be. The faithful guide's eyes lock onto his, her gaze firm but warm. "Trust in yourself," she says. "Trust in what you've already felt. The journey ahead will ask for more than just belief. It will ask for courage." David swallows hard, then steps forward, his legs trembling as if carrying the weight of his very soul. The road ahead is uncertain, but one thing is clear: there is no turning back now. As they continue down the winding path, David feels the weight of the silence between them. The faithful guide does not speak again, allowing the air to settle around them, heavy with the promise of the unknown. The road grows steeper, and David's breath quickens. He can feel the presence of something unseen, a force that tugs at his very soul. His doubts begin to creep in again. "What if I'm not ready for this?" he asks, his voice shaky. The faithful guide's footsteps slow, and she turns to face him. There are moments in life when we must face the truth of who we are. This is one of those moments. David swallows, but his feet carry him forward. Each step feels like a test, but it is not just the physical strain that exhausts him, it is the mental weight, the burden of his past, and the fear of the future. He reaches out to touch the stone walls along the path for reassurance. But nothing is certain anymore. The path leads them into a dense forest, where the trees rise high above them, their branches weaving together to form a canopy. The air here is thick with the scent of earth and pine, and the ground is soft with fallen leaves. Suddenly, a rustling noise breaks the silence. David stiffens, instinctively reaching for something, anything. But the faithful guide raises her hand, signaling him to remain still. "This is your first test," she says, her voice steady but full of weight. "Face what comes, but do not fear it." The leaves crackle as a shadowy figure steps out from behind a tree. It is tall, dark, and cloaked in tattered robes. Its face is obscured by a hood, and it moves toward them with a chilling presence. The air grows colder, the shadows deepening. David's heart races, his instincts telling him to flee. But the faithful guide does not move. "Stay steady," she instructs, her voice unwavering. "The darkness will test you, but you must not let it consume you." The shadowy figure steps closer, its presence suffocating, filling the space with an oppressive force. David can feel the weight of its stare, even though its face remains hidden. His heart pounds in his chest, but the faithful guide remains unshaken. "It is not real," she whispers, barely audible. "It is only a manifestation of your fear." David's eyes widen, unable to look away from the figure. His breath catches in his throat. The figure raises a hand, its fingers twisting unnaturally, as if to reach out for him. David steps back instinctively, but the faithful guide places a hand on his shoulder. "You must face it," she urges softly. "Do not run from your fear, or it will consume you." The figure's hand moves toward David, but just before it makes contact, he feels something shift within him, a flicker of resolve. Slowly, he raises his own hand, facing the darkness with newfound courage. The figure freezes, its presence now fading into the shadows. As the figure vanishes into the mist, David stands frozen for a moment, his mind racing. The forest around them seems to breathe, the silence almost deafening in its stillness. You faced it, the faithful guide says with quiet approval. But remember, the darkness is not always a figure. Sometimes it will be your own doubts. David looks down, the weight of her words settling into him. The journey is not just about the external challenges. It is also about the internal battles, the fears he must confront within himself. Will I ever truly be ready? David asks, his voice filled with uncertainty. The faithful guide places a hand on his arm. You are already on your path, she says. Every step you take is a step closer to understanding. David nods, though the uncertainty still lingers. But now, something inside him is stronger. The darkness had come, and he had faced it. Perhaps after all, he might be ready. The morning sun filters through the dense trees, casting long, thin beams of light across the forest floor. David walks beside the faithful guide, his mind racing with uncertainty. They have been on this journey for days, and still, the answers elude him. He feels as though he is walking through a fog, both physically and mentally. I don't understand, he says, his voice shaky. What is it that I'm supposed to learn? Why am I here? The faithful guide looks at him, her gaze steady and knowing. It is not the answers you seek, she replies softly, but the truth you must uncover within yourself. David frowns, confusion clouding his features. What do you mean? How can I find truth if I don't even know what it is? The faithful guide stops, turning to face him. The truth is not always something that can be found. Sometimes it is something that is revealed to you when you are ready to see it. David swallows hard, the weight of her words settling into his chest. The world feels both impossibly vast and crushingly small, all at once. David's mind churns as they continue walking, but his thoughts are interrupted by a sudden shift in the atmosphere. The forest grows still, the usual sounds of birds and rustling leaves suddenly absent. The air grows thick, almost suffocating. He feels an unnatural chill seep into his skin, and a whisper echoes through the silence. David. The voice is faint at first, almost a trickle of sound carried on the wind. He stops in his tracks, his breath catching in his throat. Who's there? He calls out, his voice trembling. The faithful guide halts as well, her expression unchanging. You are not alone, she says softly. Listen. The whisper comes again, louder this time, though the source remains hidden. David. The voice is warm and familiar, as if it belongs to someone he has known for a long time. But the words are not meant for him alone. You are seen, the voice says, each word reverberating in the still air. A surge of warmth floods David's chest, and for the first time, he feels something greater than himself stirring inside him. David's heart races as the voice speaks to him again, this time more clearly. You are seen. The words echo within his chest, vibrating through his very being. The faithful guide places a hand on his shoulder, offering quiet reassurance. It is the divine messenger, she explains. You are beginning to hear the call. David feels his pulse quicken as a sense of awe fills him. The message isn't just a whisper in the wind. He feels it deep within himself, like a seed sprouting in the depths of his soul. But why me? He asks, his voice barely above a whisper. Why am I chosen? The faithful guide turns to face him fully. You are not chosen by chance, David. You were always meant to walk this path. The journey is yours to embrace. The voice calls again, this time more urgently. David. His breath catches as the figure of the divine messenger materializes before them, shimmering with ethereal light. It hovers just beyond their reach, its form shifting like liquid silver. David is unable to look away, his fear replaced by wonder. The divine messenger's presence fills him with a peace he never thought possible. The divine messenger speaks, though its voice is not heard in the traditional sense. Instead, the words resonate deep within David's mind, as though they are being imprinted onto his soul. David, it says, its voice both comforting and authoritative. The path you walk is not just your own. It is a thread in the vast tapestry of existence. You have been brought here not to find the answers, but to become part of something greater than yourself. David's mind reels as he tries to grasp the enormity of the message. But what is my purpose, he asks, the question slipping from his lips before he can stop it. The divine messenger pauses for a moment, and then its form flickers, as though flickering between different dimensions. Your purpose is to awaken the truth within others, it says. You are the catalyst for change, David, and through you, the divine will touch many lives. The weight of the message presses upon him, filling him with both awe and an overwhelming sense of responsibility. As the figure begins to fade, it leaves behind only the lingering warmth of its presence. As the divine messenger fades from view, the forest returns to its usual quiet. The hum of life resumes, but something within David has changed. He feels different, lighter, yet heavier at the same time. The faithful guide watches him, her eyes full of understanding. What you've experienced, she says, her voice soft, is only the beginning. What comes next will require everything you have. David nods, though doubt still lingers in his heart. The weight of the message is immense, but the promise of something greater than himself stirs a fire within him. I'm not sure I'm ready, he admits, his voice uncertain. The faithful guide smiles gently. Shio, you are already more ready than you know. The path ahead will be difficult, but you are not alone. You never have been. David looks ahead, the road now clearer in his mind. The first step was taken. Now there's no turning back. The path grows darker as David and the faithful guide continue deeper into the forest. The air becomes thick, and an oppressive silence fills the space around them. David's steps slow as doubt begins to creep into his heart once again. I thought I was ready, he murmurs, his voice barely a whisper, but I'm not sure I am. The weight of all this is too much. How am I supposed to face what's ahead? The faithful guide doesn't respond immediately. She merely watches him with a calm, knowing gaze, allowing him the space to work through his feelings. After a long pause, she speaks. You've already faced much, David. The journey doesn't stop when you're ready. It stops when you decide you are. The real test is not in what you encounter, but in how you choose to face it. David looks at her, his eyes filled with uncertainty. The voice of doubt within him grows louder, its presence almost suffocating. But what if I fail? He asks, his chest tightening. What if I'm not strong enough? She places a steady hand on his shoulder. You are stronger than you think. Fear is only the shadow of doubt. The moment you face it is the moment it loses its power. David continues to walk, but the voice of doubt grows louder. The forest feels colder, the air thick with a sense of foreboding. I can't do this, David whispers to himself. The words tumble out before he can stop them, but they feel real, like a reflection of his inner turmoil. The faithful guide senses the shift in his energy and steps closer. The path is never easy, she says, her voice gentle but firm. But it is yours to walk. The struggles you face along the way will shape you, just as the wind shapes the stone. David shakes his head. But I'm not like you. I don't have that strength. The faithful guide stops, turning to face him. Strength doesn't come from the absence of doubt. It comes from the courage to keep moving forward despite it. David looks at her, his chest tight with fear. He knows she's right, but the fear feels all-consuming. And what if my courage isn't enough, he asks. The faithful guide smiles softly. Then you will find a strength you never knew you had, simply by choosing to act. As they press forward, the silence of the forest is shattered by a sudden rustling in the trees. David's heart races as a dark shape darts from the shadows, and before he can react, a figure emerges from the underbrush. It is cloaked in darkness, its face hidden beneath a hood. It moves toward him with unnatural speed, its presence filling the air with an overwhelming sense of danger. The faithful guide steps forward, her hand outstretched, but David can't move. Fear grips him. What is this? He whispers. Why now? The faithful guide turns to him. It is a manifestation of your fear, David. It will not harm you unless you let it. The figure draws closer, its form shifting and flickering, like smoke caught in the wind. "You are nothing," it whispers, its voice like the screech of metal against stone. "Weak, unworthy." David's heart pounds in his chest, but the words of the faithful guide echo in his mind. "Face it, David. Let it come. Do not run from your fear." He takes a shaky breath, his legs trembling, but with a surge of determination, he steps forward. David stands frozen in front of the dark figure, the weight of its words pressing down on him. The creature's form shifts, and the air becomes thick with the scent of decay and emptiness. "You are nothing," it hisses again, stepping closer. David's breath catches in his throat, but he remembers the faithful guide's words. "Face it." His mind flashes back to the lessons he's learned so far, the strength that lies within him, the courage to keep moving forward. He clenches his fists, summoning all the strength he can muster. "I am more than this," he says, his voice shaky but growing stronger with each word. "I'm not afraid of you." The figure pauses, its form flickering in response. "You are nothing," it repeats, its voice like the rattling of chains. "You cannot defeat me." But David steps forward, his voice steady. "I don't need to defeat you. I just need to keep going." The figure shudders, its form losing its solidity, flickering in and out of existence. With a final defiant step, David faces the fear head-on, and the figure dissolves into the shadows. The figure is gone, and the forest feels lighter. David stands in silence, the echoes of his heart pounding in his chest. He looks around, unsure if the battle is over or if it's only just begun. The faithful guide steps beside him, her gaze fixed on the path ahead. "You've faced your fear, David," she says softly. "Now you must continue on. The journey is long, and it will ask much of you. But you have proven that you are stronger than you think." David nods, his body still trembling, but there is a sense of relief. He has taken the first step. "I didn't know if I could," he admits. "But now I see that fear doesn't control me. It only exists if I let it." The faithful guide smiles gently. "You are ready now. The path ahead will be clearer, and the obstacles smaller. Trust in what you've learned, and keep moving forward." With a deep breath, David looks toward the horizon, the path now illuminated before him. The sun hangs low in the sky, casting an amber glow over the horizon. The journey has taken them far, and now David feels a heavy weight pressing upon him. He stands before a cliff that seems to drop into an endless abyss. The path ahead feels uncertain, as if the world itself is testing him one last time. "This is it, isn't it?" he asks quietly, his voice filled with both fear and resolve. The faithful guide stands beside him, watching the vast expanse. "Yes," she replies softly. "This is the final test. It is not the journey you must fear, but the leap of faith it requires." David stares into the distance, the wind picking up as if responding to his uncertainty. "And what if I fall?" he asks, his voice tinged with doubt. The faithful guide places a hand on his shoulder, steadying him. "Then you will rise again. This test is not about avoiding failure. It is about trusting that you can overcome it." The sound of the wind fills the silence as David takes a deep breath, the weight of his choice settling into his chest. David's mind races, the abyss before him seeming to grow wider with each passing moment. The doubts he has carried throughout the journey now come to the surface, and he wonders if he's truly ready. "I'm not sure I can do this," he says, his voice breaking with emotion. "How can I take a step forward when I can't even see where it leads?" The faithful guide looks at him, her eyes filled with unwavering certainty. "Faith is not about seeing the end of the path, David. It's about trusting that it exists even when you cannot see it." David turns to her, his heart heavy. "But what if I fall?" he repeats, the fear of failure gripping him. "Then you will get up," she answers simply, her voice firm. "You have learned the strength within yourself to rise, no matter how many times you fall. And this," she gestures toward the cliff, "is just another part of that lesson." David's breath quickens as the gravity of her words sinks in. He is standing at the edge, but it is not the edge of his defeat, it is the edge of his transformation. David takes a step closer to the edge, his heart pounding. He feels the wind against his skin, and with it, the sense of being suspended between two worlds, one of fear, the other of faith. How do I know I won't fall? He asks, his voice barely above a whisper. The faithful guide steps forward, her gaze unwavering. You will never know until you take that first step. But that is the essence of faith, trusting that you will be caught, even when you cannot see the hands that will catch you. David hesitates, his mind filled with images of failure, of the abyss consuming him. And if I fall anyway? He asks, his voice full of doubt. The faithful guide smiles, a soft, knowing smile. Then you will rise. You are not the man who stepped onto this path, David. You are someone different now, someone stronger, and someone capable of walking through the fire and emerging unscathed. David looks at her, his breath catching in his throat. For the first time, he truly believes her. He steps forward, his heart steady, and his soul ready to face whatever comes next. David takes a deep breath, his heart steady, and steps forward. The ground beneath him shifts, but he doesn't falter. Each step feels like a test, but it also feels like freedom. Freedom from fear, from doubt, and from the chains of his past. As he walks, the wind dies down, and the mist below him dissipates, revealing a clear path. Faithful guide follows behind, her steps light but purposeful. You've done it, she says softly, her voice filled with pride. You've taken the leap, David, and now the path ahead is open to you. David looks back at her, his heart swelling with emotion. It wasn't just the step, was it? He asks, his voice quiet but filled with understanding. It was everything that led to it. The faith, the courage, the willingness to trust in something greater than myself. The faithful guide smiles, her eyes twinkling with approval. Yes, she replies. It was all of that. And now you are ready to walk the rest of the path. The journey is yours to shape. As they continue their journey, the weight of the moment lingers in the air, but now it feels lighter, as if the world itself is opening up to David. He is no longer bound by fear or doubt. I feel different, he says, his voice filled with awe. Like I've become someone else, someone who knows they can do whatever it takes. The faithful guide smiles, her face serene. You have always been this person, David, she says gently. You just had to believe it for yourself. David looks around at the path before him, his eyes now filled with purpose. I don't know what comes next, he admits, but I know I'm ready for it. The faithful guide nods, her eyes twinkling. Well, that is all you need to know. The rest will reveal itself when the time is right. With that, they continue down the path, the horizon ahead filled with infinite possibilities. The sky darkens, a storm brewing around them. David stands on the cliff, sensing something is coming. I don't know what to expect, he murmurs. The faithful guide stands next to him, calm. It won't be what you expect, but trust it. The air feels alive with energy. What if I can't hear it? David asks. You will. Trust yourself, she replies. A voice, deep and resonant, fills David's chest. David! It calls to him, and the world feels alive with its power. It has begun. The faithful guide whispers. Listen. David feels the storm intensify, the air thick with divine energy. It's coming, he whispers. The wind howls as a voice echoes through him. David, the faithful guide, is calm. Listen, she says. The divine presence fills him with awe, and the storm suddenly stops. Silence falls. You are ready, the voice says. The time has come, the faithful guide adds. Listen, David, the divine speaks. The voice resonates within David, powerful yet comforting. You are ready. Embrace your truth. David swallows uncertainty, still lingering. What's my purpose? He asks. The voice answers, you are the catalyst. You are more than you know. David's heart swells with understanding. No, I am ready, he whispers, stepping into the unknown. Then take this step, the voice urges. Embrace the truth within you. David's heart is at peace. The divine voice echoes within him. You've faced your doubts, your fears. You are no longer bound by the past. David's chest fills with warmth. I understand, he says. I am ready. The voice replies, you are more than you have ever known. Now, walk the path of your truth. David smiles softly, ready for what comes next. David takes a deep breath. Thank you, he says, for helping me find the truth. The faithful guide smiles. You always had it within you, David. David looks ahead, his heart light. I am ready for whatever comes next, he says. The faithful guide nods. You are ready. With that, they continue down the path, the horizon filled with endless possibilities. David stands on a hilltop as the sun rises, casting a warm golden light over the land. I never thought I'd be here, he says, filled with peace. The faithful guide stands beside him. You've come farther than you know, she replies. David smiles softly. Thank you for everything, he says. The path was always yours to walk, she says gently. David takes a deep breath. The journey is complete, but his path is just beginning. David walks the path ahead, feeling lighter than ever. I was afraid for so long, but now I realize it's not fear that defines me. He reflects. The faithful guide smiles. It's how you face fear that defines you. David nods. I'm ready now, for everything that comes next. The faithful guide gives a quiet nod. And you will meet it with strength and faith. David pauses, taking in the beauty around him. I understand now, he says. Peace isn't something you find, it's something you create. The faithful guide watches him. Exactly, she replies. You've learned to create your own peace. Now, you must share it with others. David's heart fills with purpose. I'm ready. As they walk, David reflects. I used to wonder if I'd ever find peace, he admits. But I see now that peace is a choice. The faithful guide nods. Yes, it's a choice you make every day. David smiles. I've made that choice. I'm walking toward the life I've always wanted. The faithful guide smiles back. And now you will walk it with grace. David stands on a hill, the world stretching before him. I'm ready for whatever comes next, he says, his voice filled with resolve. The faithful guide stands beside him. You are ready. You always were. David nods. Thank you, he says. The faithful guide smiles softly. You've always had the strength within you. Now you know how to use it. Together, they look ahead, the path open before them.